Edward Theodore Gein. Few names have inspired as much fear or left such a deep scar on popular culture as this one. What you're about to see is a glimpse into a world of real horror, a case that tested the limits of both the police and society itself. We're about to witness a fragment, a small, terrifying piece of Ed Gein, the man who stole the skin of his victims. What's the best way to tell the story of a monster? By exploring his human side? His pain? His childhood? No. Ed Gein terrorized an entire community, violated the memory of dozens of people, and took the lives of at least 2 innocent women. He was born human, but became something else. Decades after his crimes, his grave still attracts visitors. Fans even. How can that be? No, we won't dare to step into Ed Gein's mind. It's like staring into a black sun. You can't, you shouldn't. Instead, we'll follow the story through the eyes of the man who caught him, Sheriff Art Schley. The closest we'll get to Gein's mind is through the woman who made him, his mother, Augusta Wilhelm, a woman who may have turned a child into an irredeemable monster.
Mr. 7 years. What kind of a man did you know him as? Well, Manning's a nice man, just like anybody else.
Everything has a limit. Sheriff Art Schley found his in November 1957. He was only 32, but had already seen more horrors than most men see in a lifetime. And that night, he reached his breaking point. During interrogation, Art Schley grabbed the suspect by the head, his rage boiling over. In that instant, he forgot the badge, the oath, the law itself. He slammed the suspect's head against the brick wall, once, twice, 3 times, until the adrenaline faded. In that moment, he didn't see any other human reaction possible. The suspect had confessed everything. Schley couldn't handle it. Not the words, not the laughter. He remembered every detail of the confession, and he snapped. The case almost ended right there, in that interrogation room. But the confession was later thrown out. Police brutality. To understand Sheriff Schley's reaction, we have to go back, far back, to the story of a woman named Augusta Wilhelm. Augusta was born in 1878, near the Mississippi River in Wisconsin. She was one of 8 children in a family of German immigrants who had fled religious persecution in Prussia. They belonged to an old branch of the Lutheran Church, a deeply radical one. To them, every human thought, every action was infected with sin. Humanity, they believed, deserved eternal damnation. Augusta grew up in that world of punishment and guilt. At 22, she married George Philip Gein, a carpenter and hunter, also of German descent, but she regretted it almost immediately. George didn't share her faith. Worse, he drank. Divorce wasn't an option for someone like Augusta, so she devoted herself entirely to her children. First Henry, then Edward. She sold her small grocery store and bought a farmhouse far from town where she could raise her sons away from temptation. It was a mistake. Augusta taught her sons that all women were sinful, except her. Every other woman, she said, was an instrument of the devil, meant to corrupt men. She filled their minds with the darker verses of the Old Testament: death, punishment, divine wrath. Henry, the oldest, survived this upbringing mostly intact. Edward, shy, fragile, and sensitive, didn't. They were forbidden from making friends. According to Augusta, all the other children came from corrupt families. Any deviation, any curiosity was punished harshly. Those who went to school with Edward remembered him as a quiet, awkward boy, laughing to himself for no reason. He grew obsessed with his mother, his only comfort, his only model. No one was allowed near the farm. Even his brother avoided him. His father drank himself to death in 1940, leaving Augusta and the boys behind. To survive, Henry and Edward took any work they could find. Augusta told Edward he had to stay pure, loyal to her forever. Sex, she warned, was the gateway to hell. Henry tried to live his own life. He fell in love with a widow nearby and wanted to move in with her. He even tried to pull Edward away from their mother's control. But the bond between Edward and Augusta was something unbreakable. For better or worse, Henry never saw the danger. No one did. In 1944, Henry Gein died in a fire on the family property. The details were never clear. Edward claimed they were burning brush when the flames got out of control. By the time firefighters arrived, Henry was missing. Later that night, they found his body face down. No burns, but bruises on his head. Police ruled it an accident. The official cause, asphyxiation. No autopsy, no questions. No one realized that Cain had killed Abel. Augusta had lost her husband and her eldest son, but she still had Edward, her devoted Ed. That same year, she suffered a stroke, and of course, it was Ed who cared for her. Even confined to a wheelchair, Augusta had enough strength left for one final lesson, one last act of hatred. It happened when she and Ed went to buy straw from a local farmer named Smith. Augusta saw Smith beating a dog. A woman ran from the house begging him to stop. He didn't. He beat the dog to death. But Augusta wasn't shocked by the cruelty. She was horrified by the woman. Smith wasn't married, meaning that woman could only be a sinner. Augusta ordered her son never to deal with Smith, or, as she called her, that whore, ever again. Later that year, she died at 67, leaving Edward alone with his thoughts, his isolation, and his darkness. Edward was about to become Ed Gein, the Butcher of Plainfield. 12 years later, Ed Gein's face would be slammed against a brick wall. It was November 16th, 1957. The second day of deer hunting season in Plainfield, Wisconsin. Bernice Worden was working at her family's hardware store, just like she had every day since her husband's death 15 years earlier. She was loved by everyone, kind, respected, dependable. But that day, business was slow. It was hunting season after all. Few customers came in. No one saw anything unusual. At 5 p.m., Bernice's son, Deputy Sheriff Frank Worden, finished his shift and stopped by the store to check on her. The front door was unlocked. The place was empty. The cash register was open, and a trail of blood led from the counter to the back door. On the floor lay a rifle shell, the same type used for deer hunting. Frank froze. He had seen this before. The signs were identical to the disappearance of another woman 3 years earlier. Mary Hogan, the owner of a rural tavern who had vanished under the same mysterious circumstances. A rifle shell, a trail of blood. No body. Mary Hogan had never been found. Plainfield had fewer than 700 residents. It was the kind of place where everyone knew each other. Same stores, same schools, same faces. How could a crime like that happen there? Then Frank remembered something. In the last few days, a strange man had stopped by the store. A man the whole town whispered about, Ed Gein. He had asked Bernice, jokingly, if she'd like to go ice skating with him. It was bizarre. No one had ever seen Ed with a woman before. He lived alone, in a decaying farmhouse no one dared to enter. Ed had also asked if the store would be open the next day. Bernice told him yes, she'd be there. Ed said he'd come back for antifreeze. When Frank checked the store's sales book, the last receipt was for antifreeze, written in his mother's handwriting. That was enough. Frank called the sheriff's department and asked them to check Gein's farm. They went once. No answer. They went again, later that night, with Sheriff Art Schley himself. The Gein farmhouse stood in total darkness. No electricity, no signs of life. Schley pulled out his flashlight and headed toward a small wooden shed behind the house. The summer kitchen. He hit the mark. Schley and his assistant were stunned. The door was open. Inside, something was hanging from the ceiling. At first glance, it looked like the carcass of a deer, but it wasn't. It was a human body, hanging upside down by the legs, headless, dressed in the skin of a deer. It was Bernice Worden. Sheriff Schley ran outside and vomited. That was only the beginning of a night that would haunt him for the rest of his life. Then, trembling, he went back in. Bernice's head was in a burlap sack. Her organs were in a bucket. Her heart lay inside the wood stove. She had been shot and treated like an animal. The Madison forensic team was called in immediately. Soon, police from nearby counties arrived, some to search for Gein, others to explore the house. They brought generators and floodlights to illuminate every room. What they found inside was beyond comprehension. The house looked like a home from the outside. But inside it was a workshop of nightmares. On the kitchen table sat a bowl of soup. It wasn't soup. It was a human skull cut into a bowl. 2 more skulls were found on Gein's bedposts. Everywhere they looked, the police found pieces of the dead, chairs upholstered with human skin, a lampshade made of faces, a belt decorated with nipples, masks, women's faces, carefully peeled off and stitched. The commotion quickly drew the attention of the press. Journalists already knew Bernice Worden's body had been found, but they didn't understand why so many officers were there, or why their faces looked so horrified. It was Sheriff Art Schley who gave the only statement possible that night. It was just too horrible. Horrible beyond belief. The number of victims was impossible to estimate, all women. The night seemed endless. In a paper bag, police found Mary Hogan's face, still intact. In a box, her skull, and in a closet, a full bodysuit made from the skin of several women. Ed Gein had been collecting them, piece by piece. Later that night, they found him, eating dinner at a neighbor's house, calm, polite, like nothing had happened. Sheriff Schley handcuffed him personally. In every photo from that night, Ed Gein is smiling. At the station, he confessed everything, coldly, in detail. That's when Schley snapped, grabbing Gein's head and slamming it against the wall, again and again. The confession was thrown out of court for police brutality. Didn't matter. Gein confessed again and again, for years. He claimed most of the remains came from graves, that he dug up the bodies of recently buried women and used their skin to make a suit so he could become the only thing he ever loved in this world, his mother. The following months were chaos. Officers from all over called to connect missing women to the Butcher of Plainfield. But fortunately, or unfortunately, only 2 were ever confirmed, Mary Hogan and Bernice Worden. Edward Theodore Gein, the Butcher of Plainfield, was declared legally insane and sent to a state psychiatric hospital. He spent many years there before being found fit for trial, only 11 years after being captured in 1968. He was convicted of Bernice's murder, but remained in psychiatric custody for the rest of his life. He died in 1984 of lung cancer at 77. Before his trial, the Gein farmhouse was scheduled for auction in March 1958. Days before it could happen, it mysteriously burned to the ground. No investigation was ever opened. The volunteer fire department, led by Frank Worden, Bernice's son, chose the longest route possible. It was too late. Nothing was left but ashes. A month before the trial, Sheriff Art Schley died of a heart attack. He was only 43, but as mentioned earlier, he had already witnessed more horrors than most officers see in a lifetime. His family said he was haunted by what he saw in that house, terrified of having to relive it in court. He didn't want to go back there, not even in his mind. Art Schley was also afraid to admit before a judge that he had beaten the accused. He carried a guilt that was never his to bear. Art Schley was forgotten, but Ed Gein lived on. He inspired Psycho, a classic suspense film written by Alfred Hitchcock about a tormented killer shaped by his mother. Then The Silence of the Lambs, where the serial killer Buffalo Bill also makes a suit out of his victim's skin. The macabre collection of masks and furniture created by Ed Gein also inspired the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. In a twisted way, Ed Gein became part of Western culture, a symbol of fascination and fear. Type his name online and you'll find hundreds of books, films, even t-shirts with his face. The shadow of Ed Gein never left. It returns again and again to test how far our society can stare into darkness before looking away. What went wrong with Ed Gein? Did Augusta create a monster? Or was it always there, waiting to be unleashed? Why do we glorify monsters and forget the people who fought them? Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave your thoughts below. See you in the next one.